Hey everybody, welcome to today's skill breakdown. Only a couple of these left in the list, and then this series will be done. And today's, I'm going to be covering Lady Boudicea, however it's pronounced. And she's a neutral alignment Vanguard. You first meet her during Act 1, but you don't actually recruit her until Act 3. And because of how late you get her in the game and her neutral alignment, getting her loyalty up is probably one of the hardest characters in the game to get the loyalty up with. So that kind of makes some people shy away from her, but it's definitely doable, and if you can, she's very much worth it. She's, in my opinion, the strongest Vanguard in the game. And as we go through her skills, maybe you'll start to see why. To start it off, as always, in Tier 1 we have the basic attack, her strike attack, 3 AP, 75% weapon damage to an adjacent enemy, 2 times, just like most of the other Vanguards, barring Tristan. With the first upgrade, it gets the Poison Blade upgrade, so now it can apply poison. This is pretty standard. Sinister Blow, plus 15% weapon damage for strike. This is also pretty common. All the other Vanguards have this. As well as Finishing Blow, where you get an AP if you kill a unit using strike, and this is like 99% of their damage output, so definitely an upgrade you're going to want to pick up for her on this, or any Vanguard really. But her fourth upgrade is actually different from other Vanguards. She's unique in the fact that she has a second Sinister Blow upgrade. This means she gets plus 30% total, bringing this up to a base of 105%. So just off the bat, she has the highest base damage for her basic attack compared to any other Vanguard, which is a good leg up. After that, it's fairly basic stuff with things like jump, standard Vanguard mobility move, very solid with the upgrades you get on it. It's 1 AP cost, 2 turn cooldown, 2 to 5 range, so you can use this very often and pretty freely to get around the battlefield and maneuver to get to enemy backline or position yourself for backstabs on enemy frontline. The Lope cooldown reduces the cooldown by 1, Vault reduces the cost by 1, and then Long Jump increases the range by 1, bring it up to these stats you can see here. The last one is Hurdle, where you also get a movement AP after using Jump. This one I do think is also worth taking. You use Jump and then you can, if it isn't quite far enough, you get a sort of free movement point to then cover that last space that you maybe need to get into the position you want. Or just help mitigate the distance you need to cover to continue going after whoever it is you're chasing down. Another unique thing she has, compared to the other Vanguards, is in Tier 1 she has Flurry. This is a skill that defenders have, but hers is a bit different. For defenders, I believe it's 100% weapon damage. As a Vanguard, having a much higher damage capability because of her other skills, that would be a little busted on her, so the devs gave her a 50% damage version. And that's because she will be also hitting them 2 times, as opposed to the 1 time that defenders get. For 2 enemy adjacent targets, and it targets them separately, 1 turn cooldown, so you can use this every round if you want to. 4 AP cost, so it is a little more expensive than a standard attack, but if you're hitting 2 enemies, it's a little more AP efficient. This skill actually is baked into her skill tree. If you do a respec on her, you cannot get rid of this skill. It's a decent one, so it's not even necessarily one I think you should get rid of. You may not use it a whole lot, but it will be useful when it's presenting itself in the opportune time. The upgrades for Armor Breaker, it gains 30% armor breaking, not quite as strong as the Defender version. Zestful Flurry, gain 1 AP when killing a unit with Flurry. Dismemberment, plus 50% weapon damage, and Extended Flurry can out-target additional enemy. If you do want to use Flurry on her, all of these are very good upgrades on it and worth taking. If you find yourself not using Flurry a whole lot, I wouldn't put the skill points into here, just so that way it's occasionally stronger when you do choose to use it. She has Hide, just like all the Vanguards. You go into that stealth, you run around, and then you get a huge surprise damage bonus when you reveal yourself and stab someone. With Stalker, plus 2 tiles of movement after being revealed. This is basically after you are revealed, you can only take X amount of tile steps before you lose the surprise damage bonus. You get extra 2 tiles for this. This doesn't come up a whole lot unless you're going after the Unseelie, or maybe an enemy revealed you, but you're trying to go for someone that's passed them at the start of your turn, so it is helpful to have. Surprise damage, you just increase the damage bonus by 20%. This is a must-have. Preparation, you get 2 movement AP when you start your turn hidden. Definitely also a must-have, because you should be starting most of your turns hidden. And subtle. The detection range is now -1, just very good, so that way now you can kind of do that cheese where you take a step away, hide, step back in, and attack. This is pretty helpful for that. With passives like Scout, you get +1 Perception and 1 Movement AP. Generally, picking up Movement AP is useful for your Vanguards because they're very mobile. You do a lot of running around with them. With low profile, enemies prioritize attacking other units if this hero is farther than 6 tiles away. Basically, it's so she doesn't get sniped by enemy archers. This is kind of useful early game, where you maybe don't have the AP to always be hiding every single turn, but later in the game, you can do that pretty easily, so this kind of becomes a dead skill later, and because you recruit her in Act 3, there's never really a time where you're going to need this on her. And that's his counterattack. If she gets attacked with a frontal attack, she can hit him back. Again, maybe more useful early, but because you get her in Act 3, she's going to be stealth 90% plus of the time. This just does not happen hardly ever, so you're better putting the skill points elsewhere, I think, if you're going to be playing her. In Tier 2, we have another standard Vanguard ability with Throwing Dagger. It's very useful. Sometimes you just need the range to try and finish someone off without having to go running up to them to stab them and then go running to whoever else, because the other target may be kind of out of the way. 8 range is good. Cooldown of 1 is also very good. 4 AP cost is pretty decent. 100% weapon damage. With the upgrades on it of Balanced Throw, increase the range by 2, helps give it that 8 range. The lethality increases the weapon damage by 15%, definitely one you're going to want. Poison Dagger, it now applies poison. This is situational, not one I think you missed. This isn't an upgrade I think you necessarily will always need, but certain builds may help combo off of this. Will be kind of a case by case. Generally, I think you won't need this upgrade for most playstyles. And Twin Daggers, you can now throw a second dagger for half as much damage. I think it's worth taking if you're finding yourself using Throwing Dagger pretty often. I don't personally use it a whole lot, but I know a lot of players out there do. Unique to her as a Vanguard, though, she has the Encouragement skill, which is an extremely powerful support ability, and this may seem kind of weird having it on a Vanguard, but this is actually, I think, a very solid pickup on her. It only costs 1 AP, and a 2-turn cooldown with the upgrades, we'll get to in a second, but it provides all allies within 2 tiles of her plus 1 AP. So sometimes she won't be able to kill everyone, right? Some encounters will take, a few more turns than that, but giving extra AP to the rest of your party may enable them to give them just the boost they need to then finish off any important targets that your Vanguard here, Boudicea, was not able to get to. So popping this and then having her go off and do her business is a very solid strategy. And sometimes you find yourself in the middle of a fight where she's killed some enemies, the remaining enemies aren't quite in range of her to move up to and hit, but maybe your party is in range of her to move up to them and then use this, so you don't even always use this as an opener. So there's some good flexibility with this. The upgrade of the Lord's Will reduces the cost by 1, bringing it down to that phenomenal 1 cost. The Rosary Prayer reduces the cooldown by 1, bringing it down to 2, which is very, very strong. And then the Lord's Wrath, one I think is also worth picking up. Grant a 20% weapon damage buff to allies adjacent to her when she casts it. This just very much synergizes more into that strategy of how to use this I was talking about just a little bit ago. And Swift Justice, plus 2 movement AP to them. Very helpful if you have another melee damage dealer, for example, or a defender, anyone really, just to help them reposition and then go after whoever needs some killing. She does have the Unyielding passive, which I believe is unique to her amongst the Vanguards. It's a pretty useful skill where you get HP back when you hit an enemy, and because she can hit twice, you'll actually be getting 12 damage for each attack with this ability, which is pretty strong. I mean, 77 hit points you can see here, getting 12 of that back is a pretty decent chunk, and she can easily heal back up to full. But again, this is just one of those abilities where it's kind of maybe better earlier on in the gameplay experience, but by the time you've reached the point where you're recruiting her, and if not then, not much later into the game, end of Act 3, early Act 4 endgame, she's just not going to be taking a whole lot of damage, so I don't know how useful this is, how much you're going to be needing some healing on her. The upgrades on it is 10% vitality, definitely something I think you should skip out on. 5% extra HP from extra HP, physical resistance for plus 15%, physical debuff resist, and ruthlessness, 6 HP on kill, so it'd be 18 on a kill. Again, just, I don't really think this is the best on her. I know some players have talked about how this has been pretty good for her in their experience. Just with how I play, I don't see myself getting a whole lot of mileage out of this. So see for yourself. If your Boudicea is getting beat up every now and then, maybe take the base skill. The upgrades, though, I don't think you'll ever need. If you are struggling with some tankiness on your Boudicea, there is the robust passive, 10% vitality and HP. And she does get dodge, 15% dodge, so if, maybe you had a slip up and accidentally got revealed or something, this does help her mitigate some of the damages she's taking, and those slip-ups would probably be the main reason I would consider taking Unyielding, just kind of circling back to that a little bit again. Moving into Tier 3, there's nothing actually fancy here for her Tier 3. This is pretty standard. She has jumping attack, 150% weapon damage, she leaps to the enemy, hits them, and then returns back to her position. This can retain the surprise damage bonus, so that's pretty good about it. With Hit and Run, it does an extra 25% more damage if you have that surprise damage bonus applied. Nimble, reduce the cooldown by 1. Long Rush, increase the range by 1. And Recoil knocks the target back. All of these upgrades are pretty good, except for Recoil. I don't see much use in your Vanguard moving enemies around, especially because you're usually attacking from behind, so this would in most cases push them closer to your party, which may have some uses, but generally you're using knockback to keep them away from your party, which is my 2 cents on it. It's a pretty decent skill overall. Some players don't like it. I like it, especially since it can combo with some gear choices pretty well. It's a solid skill. The rest of the passives, very, very strong passives for the Vanguard's Backstab, just extra 50% weapon damage if you're getting a Backstab. With Finisher, that goes up to 20%. With Ambush, another 10% if you have the surprise damage bonus, so just lots of stacking damage bonuses here. With Focus Stripe, you get some armor piercing for Backstabs. This is probably the least strong of the upgrades here, so it's generally the last one I pick up amongst them. And then for the last one of Mutilate, you get 20% vulnerability, which is very strong because it just means most of your attacks are going to be applying this, which means your follow-up attacks will do even more damage to just help kill them that much faster. Assassination, you get 20% extra weapon damage to them if they have 25% vitality or less. That may seem a little low, but the upgrades on this make this skill really, really good, and extra damage is always extra damage. With Remorseless, that goes up to a 10% damage buff, so totaling 30. With Weak Spots, if they're affected by bleeding or poison, it's an extra 15%, so that would bring this up to 45, and that's where this Poison Blade upgrade really comes in handy, if your weapon can't apply poison for you. Brutality increases the threshold up to 40%, which is a huge difference. And then Vigor, just another AP refund if you kill an enemy target. This is very useful for prolonging the Vanguard turns to chain multiple kills. With Quick-Footed, you're just immune to all opportunity attacks. This is a great skill for maneuvering around the enemies. You get another Scout for another Perception and Movement AP. And Master Assassin, probably the first upgrade I would pick once you unlock Tier 3. Hide now costs 1 AP, which is actually a really big deal. It makes a very noticeable difference in my experience between how easy it is to ensure you can always hide at the end of your turn. And then you start your next turn with an additional AP. Not a movement AP, an additional AP. So comboing with the preparation skill here, you get 2 movement AP and 1 AP for starting your turn hidden, which just opens you up to being able to do a lot more with your turns. So with all of that said and wrapped up, Boudicea is a very strong Vanguard. She definitely has some, not a whole lot of uniqueness going for her, but some pretty key changes, I think, from the standard Vanguard skill tree that really makes her strong and helps her stand out. She's pretty hard to go wrong, even if you don't get really high loyalty on her. I do think she is worth using. I hope this skill breakdown was useful for anyone watching. If you made it to the end, thank you. I do appreciate it, and I hope to see you in the next one.